Here we are live. It's Thursday. What does that mean, Ron? It is what?
Podcast day.
Podcast day.
Ron and Dave, happy hour podcast.
Yeah. Let me just click that. Well, welcome everyone. It's 3 p.m. Hope you're joining us live, but if you're not joining us live, hope you get some value out of this later on. Happy Thursday to you, Ron.
Happy Thursday to you, Dave. It's been quite a week.
You ready to get right into it with our topics?
Let's jump.
Oh, we've got a doozy for the first one. This one I'm going to start with. So, two stories that are pretty big right now. The one on the right, the Coldplay gate. Has anyone not named it that yet? I'm not sure, but Coldplay gate is a few weeks old now. So, but I'm gonna bring a different take to it and compare it to a couple other things. So that's going to be my topic. Ron, where are your topics? They are here.
Hold on, you skipped a topic.
So I did not on mine.
You did the kiss cam on the right. What's on the left?
Okay, so on the left is Sydney. If I don't think I really have to tell people this because it is all over social media right now, but Sydney Sweeney's American Eagle campaign, new campaign. So I'm going to talk about my thoughts on both of these and another. So.
And David, are your thoughts linked to marketing and branding, like the impact of these images as it relates to a brand?
Certainly. And more specifically, kind of PR, crisis and marketing and branding, all that stuff. So tying it into all of it. Then that'll be my topic. And then Ron, you've got a few topics. This one.
Those are topics we're sharing. We're going to talk about the new Mortgage Coach AI, which is exciting, and some key takeaways from one of the recent podcasts.
And then next,
this is the title here is Managing and Motivating Millennials, but in fact, we're not going to really touch on how to manage or lead millennials. Instead, we're going to talk about some of the specific features and characters of millennials and how to best serve them.
And I actually don't have a slide for the third topic, so why don't you just tell them what it's going to be?
Yeah, the third topic is talking about the housing market nobility and how some people have hit the lottery with housing, how housing wealth is dispersed through generations. And we'll probably add a couple interesting insights to that.
All right. So cheers, Ron. Happy Thursday. Happy hour. Let's get into it.
Cheers. All right, let's go. I'm glad you got to go first.
All right, here we go. So my topic, let me just flash it up there real quick. Not that one, but this one. So going to talk about this for just a few moments, my take on everything. So, gosh, this is a fun one. Where do I start? So there's three stories from a PR branding perspective that kind of show bold moves, right? Let me get rid of this one. Come back to me. Yeah. There we go. All right. Three bold statements from companies, and whether you're selling jeans, mortgages, beer. The first one is the infamous Coldplay kiss cam fiasco. And it, like I said, it's been around for about 3 weeks or so, but you've probably been living under a rock if you haven't heard of it. But quick recap, company astronomer CEO and their head of HR. I'm not sure if I think it was maybe chief people officer, but they got outed at the Coldplay concert. Social media blew up. Everyone's heard about it. Chris Martin, lead singer of Coldplay, joked about it in the moment. And as a result, both executives resigned. Probably most people have also seen Astronomer's response, but if you haven't, they hired Gwyneth Paltrow, the lead singer, Chris Martin of Coldplay, his ex-wife, as their spokesperson. In my opinion, a pretty risky move, but it turned a scandal into headlines. And since then, their brand mentions have increased 40%. Now, the next one, more recently, you've probably seen it this week. I think it launched about a week ago, but it's really been all over social media for the last 2 to 3 days. But the Sydney Sweeney American Eagle jeans campaign, where their great jeans are playing on the word jeans with a G versus jeans with a J. It, much like the next one I'm going to talk to, it sparked a lot of online backlash for somewhat being tone deaf, even eugenics adjacent. They've since it's launched, American Eagle they've kind of stood firm, no apologies, nothing yet. I did see a response yesterday from American Eagle on social media with a response, but it ended up being fake. I got a bit of a chuckle out of it, but it was fake. Now, early data shows their stock is up. Ron, did you say it was 25? Was it their stock was
It
up
went up.
20?
It went up 20% on the first day of the campaign. It since has come back a little bit, but 20% day one.
Right. And their engagement is up 25%. Now, it is early for American Eagle, but we'll see if there's any financial gains or losses from it. So far, their stock is up, but it is still quite early. And the White House even today just responded on it. I think was it Donald Trump Jr. They've posted about it. Kind of crazy the amount of attention it's getting. Now, contrast this with Bud Light's 2023 Dylan Mulvaney campaign. It was aiming for inclusivity, great thing, but they sent Dylan, a transgender woman influencer online. They sent Dylan a personalized can and was all of a sudden the spokesperson for Bud Light. And we all heard it on the right, conservatives calling it woke, Kid Rock. He went viral when he shot a case of Bud Light and posted it on social. Financially, their sales tanked down 22%, and Anheuser, am I saying that right? Anheuser lost 27 billion in market value, and come late 2024, revenue was still down 14%. So what does that mean for us in the mortgage and real estate industry? Excuse me. For me, it just kind of screams bold marketing, like advertising maybe low rates in a tough market. It can grab attention, but if you misjudge your audience or you say maybe the wrong thing, your brand could be tarnished. You could be done from it. There was a study 2025 where 77% of successful campaigns and relevant and bold campaigns, but the key is execution. The company Astronomer and American Eagle so far have owned their risks, and it's too early to tell what the financial hits long term will be. But Bud Light, from my perspective, didn't quite own their backlash or their response quite the same, and they've seen a massive financial hit. So, Ron, do you have any examples or thoughts? Maybe you've been in the business for a long time, but do you have any personal examples of people that have made similar moves, not on the scale of Anheuser, Bud, or American Eagle, but do you have any examples where you've seen people make bold moves, bold statements online where there was a similar fallout?
Yeah, well, David, nothing comes immediately to mind, but there are people that have made lemonade out of lemons, and that's definitely what Astronomer is doing here. And Gwyneth Paltrow, that 60-second commercial is remarkable. It's brilliant, and because the way that they do the subtitles that lead you to think about what you're thinking, and then she's talking about something totally different, like. We at Astronomer really appreciate all the attention we're getting to our cloud services security products, and nobody's thinking that. Everybody's and the subtitles are WTF. If you're reading the subtitles, but you're listening to her. Yes, we understand all this interest in our company, and we certainly have good security products. And she keeps going as doing the straight lines, while below her the captions are like completely like, what the heck? It's great. And yes, there has been companies that have totally stepped into the bucket and completely screwed it up, and then pulled it back out with humor. But part of it is owning it. Like, okay, we screwed up, right? Who did that a little bit is Coke when they rolled out the new Coke. You know who else? You know who was the king of doing that? You know who really did that, David? You may not remember what?
Who?
Who did that is when the CEO in the early 2000s took over for Domino's Pizza and said, okay, we deliver a really shitty pizza fast. We're going to fix that. We're going to actually make our pizzas good, and you're going to want them. Like, that's owning up to the reality. Like, we make crappy pizza. I tasted it. I can barely eat it. We're going to make it better. But that authenticity, that truth got, a huge amount of support. And it's one of the reasons why, of course, Domino's stock has been one of the best performing stocks for the last 30 years. It was the number one until these magnificent seven tech stocks. But being honest and telling people what they know, it's when you gaslight them, and you totally nope, you're not, what you're seeing isn't real. It's like acknowledging it, reveling in it, and then, hey, here's what we're going to do about it, is when you win.
Yeah. What was my question? I forget. Let's transition. But before we do that, if you're watching us live, I would love to hear some comments. And I didn't have time to prepare a slide. But if you comment, I'm going to pick the most interesting comment or question. If you have an opinion on all of this, I'm going to send you free one of our, this is an old slide, so forget the 15% off. That's done now. But just so you can see the swag, we make loan officer type swag, and shoot us a comment. I want to hear from Ron and I's circle. I want to hear what you guys are thinking, because we've all read the comments, but when you don't, I haven't read anyone's comments that I know personally. So I'd love to hear from some of you all if you have an opinion on American Eagle's recent take on the new jeans campaign. So shoot us a comment.
So,
would love to hear it.
David, the person with the best comment gets a t-shirt. And if we get a lot of several comments, we'll probably toss the shirts around. But let me go back to one of the other topics. You talked about Bud Light. It's really interesting. The thing wasn't that advertising campaign was so offensive to the core clients. It was their comments around the advertising campaign that, hey, we aren't going to be an enduring company if we just keep marketing to yahoos. Like, the very wrong thing to say to their core customers. If they would have done that, rolled that same campaign out and been a little bit tongue in cheek, even like, hey, our customers typically aren't this, but we should be accepting. Let's invite everybody into the tent. Their customers would have been totally fine. Versus instead they said, our customers are Neanderthals. We can barely stand them, and so we're going to shift. And they wonder why they offended their client base. Like, okay. And Dave, I have another point. I'm gonna foist this onto you. Have you seen Nike's new cowboy belt? Pull it up really quickly as you talk about brand confusion, and think, what in the heck are they doing? Who wants a Nike cowboy belt buckle, right? And the comments related to the Nike cowboy belt are hilarious. Like, great cosplay, like, like, who in the world associates Nike with a cowboy belt? And what are they doing?
Which one are we talking about?
There's one that says Nike across, like the one right there.
Yeah.
They have three of them. What are they doing? Like,
and your point to that is they just don't know their audience.
Yeah, and it's completely disingenuous to their brand, right? That's not what. How does that fit their brand, right? What other brand product, or how does it fit one of their slogans? How does that fit?
I'm trying to think of. I think my instant reaction is I like it, but it definitely doesn't. I definitely doesn't fit their current demo. But my first reaction was like, "Ooh, maybe I need one of those."
a cowboy walking out with a Nike cowboy belt buckle and a 10-gallon cowboy hat and wearing Nike Jordan 1s. Like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah,
what would that be?
Interesting. You call it Nike. That's how the Brits pronounce it. Nike. Yeah, versus Nike. I don't hear too many calling it.
The comments are hilarious because their core customers are like, what? What are you doing? Anyway, Interesting.
Right. All right. Let's move on to Mortgage Coach and AI. What's going on with this, Ron?
Yeah. So Mortgage Coach rolled out their new Mortgage Coach, AI-enabled Mortgage Coach last week. They've been building it for a year. They've had super alpha testers testing it for about 45 days. And it's a really splendid product. Of course, Mortgage Coach has been a leader about providing advice-based sales and leadership with their Mortgage Coach, where your advice matters and it's not just about price. The thing is, I was listening to a podcast, a Mortgage Coach podcast with Dave Savage, and Dave had Wally. I can't pronounce his last name. Like, I'm not going to try, but Wally on it. It was last week's podcast, and they were one of the alpha testers, and they were going through their kind of their experience for the last 30 days and how they've used this Mortgage Coach AI and how it's changed the game. And I actually got a whole lot of nuggets out of there that may or may not relate to Mortgage Coach. So this isn't a Mortgage Coach pitch. But one of the things they did a couple of things. And first, David, and I think we can go to the next slide. The first thing, let's see, Mr. King. There we go. That's not that one. We've covered that.
That's not the one. Here we go. I just wanted to share that. I did that on purpose because just for the clicks.
Yeah. So here's the first thing. I'll just go through this. The first thing that they did, which was brilliant, is they asked their customers what type of information or education they received about home ownership, buying a home, or refinancing. And they framed it in a way that, hey, look, we want to make sure that we cater our advice to wherever you're at in your home search journey. So for us to best understand where that is, can you tell us what kind of information have you already researched or got, and then where did you get it from? And they really paid attention to where they got it from because they learned a lot about where the client was. So did they get it from a Google search? Did they get it from Reddit? Did they get it from AI search like in ChatGPT? And how they answered, they started to curtail their sales pitch or their information to the client based on where they went and searched. And they hypothesized about half their clients had done some sort of AI search about home ownership, buying a home, or about refinancing. And so then they had a really good idea where their client was from. It also then told them what their AI capability was and how likely they were to use this new Mortgage Coach AI tool. So I really like that. And I think whether you use Mortgage Coach or not, that's a question that all loan officers and real estate agents should add to their questioning as they serve their clients. Now, the next thing on this that I think that they do really good, the way that the Mortgage Coach, if you go back one more, the way that the Mortgage Coach AI works is it's based on the TCA you generate. So you put all, most likely, hopefully you have an enterprise account and you're generating that TCA from your LOS system. And from that, then Mortgage Coach completely knows your customer, knows all their characteristics, so that when your customer inside the Mortgage Coach AI platform goes, hey, should I buy a house, or can I afford to buy a house, or what's the minimum amount down, or what product should I use? The AI tool is answering with knowledge about their specific situation. That's different than if your customer went to Perplexity or Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT. Those AI tools would answer non-specifically, like generally speaking, here's some of the things you may or may not want to do. Where the Mortgage Coach AI tool is hyper personalized based on their specific situation and gives them really laser focused advice. And so that makes it a really special tool. And then, David, get to the next slide. On this slide, what happens too is that AI tool is available 24/7. And this is the next thing that this Alpha group did. And by the way, the guy's name is Wally Elaberry, and I apologize if I'm saying it wrong. He seems exceptionally talented. I haven't met him, but I really like the podcast. And the podcast, by the way, is how Wally Elaberry is using AI to win buyers and wow realtors. And here's the next thing they did, and this is brilliant. And whether you use Mortgage Coach AI or not, which I suggest you do, but what they did is they created 10 prompts for the Mortgage Coach AI tool. And so they gave these prompts to their customers and they said, hey, customer, I know you're on your home buying journey and you're on your education journey. We have this wonderful tool, this AI tool, where you can ask it anything and it's going to give you hyper personalized answers back. Here's 10 questions we recommend you ask the AI tool. And so they give the list of 10 prompts. And what they're really doing is they're empowering their customers, their borrowers, to own their education. They're also granting them freedom of curiosity, and they're also getting third-party validation. But here's the other thing. And on the call, Dave did on the podcast, Dave did a great thing, was calling out to the audience, and Moisey was in the audience, and he asked for her feedback. And she goes, the thing I love about this tool is that when we travel with somebody through their home buying journey, we have a delicate balance of how much to tell them, because buying a house and getting a mortgage is very complicated. We don't want to overwhelm them with all 3,000 things they need to know. We just need to make sure we need to tell them what they need, but sometimes it's hard to know what they need. And so what happens, there's sometimes where we may not share a facet of something. Like, I don't know, how is mortgage insurance determined? Like, what's the rate, or what are the choices, or whatever it might be. And they may learn about that feature down the road. And because they don't learn about it from us, they think that we purposely omitted it, and that now that we've lost trust with them. But by having a 24/7 AI assistant that our borrowers, that, by the way, that is looks like it comes from us, is assigned to us, it looks like then that our tool can answer any question to our borrowers anytime. So there never can be that black cloud of omission, because it's always available for them, which is great. And then I love the idea of teaching your borrowers how to educate themselves, because then you take the onus. They don't have to be embarrassed about asking dumb questions. They can ask the AI tool anything they want in the whole world. And so I really like that. And the one last thing from the podcast, and Dave, I don't know if we have the ability to put the link in the podcast. If I tell you, if you can get to that podcast, just go to the Mortgage Coach channel, look up, how Wally is using AI to win borrowers and realtors. But if you go there, Wally actually put his 10 prompts in the notes as a PDF, so you can download that and use it yourself. Whether people are using the Mortgage Coach AI or using ChatGPT, it's a wonderful way to go through their journey with them. But the last thing that's really important with the Mortgage Coach AI is, if your customer asks the Mortgage Coach tool a question, that tool emails you the question, so you know what your borrowers are interested in, which is really important, because you can follow up and go, hey, Dave, I noticed that you asked, ChatGPT about down payment assistance programs. I'm an expert in your area about those. There's a good 50 to choose from. Is there any information I can provide you? So you can come alongside of them with relevant information. But the other thing that's really good is that when a client asks you a question, whether it's through a Mortgage Coach AI platform or anytime, you should be collecting those questions. But the ones that you hear the most often, you need to create a frequently asked question, or a FAQ sheet that answers those questions specifically. And then you need to post those online, because one of the things that the new AI search loves, if you think about, we talked about it last week, AEO and GEO versus SEO. AEO and GEO are, AI related search, content searches. What they want is really great, specific, detailed content. And answering a bunch of frequently asked questions, the questions are clearly labeled on what topic it is, and then you're really succinct in the answer. AI tools love that. And so as they look for loan officers to refer, they're looking for people that have command of the most important topics, and FAQs show that. So that's that Mortgage Coach topic. Dave, what do you have to add? I know you're a huge Mortgage Coach fan and a Trust Engine fan. And an AI fan, by the way.
My question is, I'm going to put the link to that video on our Facebook in the comments section. Just doing that right now. So Dave Savage's video, if you're watching this on another platform, if you go to our Facebook page, I just put that link in the comments section. My question for you, Ron, is Mortgage Coach is a leader in mortgage tech. And it has been for a while. My question to you is, how much does this up the game of the tool? Is it a game changer? Because it already is a great tool. How much better did it just get with this?
Well, I think the key thing here, Dave, is that it keeps your clients in your universe. Like whenever our clients go outside of our ecosystem, they're at risk, right? Let's say they go and do a Google search and they search for information on housing. What happens? They're going to get a bunch of targeting ads. That information is going to be sold. Google's going to sell that to vendors, right? So we put them at risk. The same thing is going to happen, and eventually with AI. We would prefer our clients not to go out of the ecosystem. Here's the other thing. This is really critically important. If all you're doing is providing the same thing that a customer can get from Google search, then you really don't have a lot of value. But when you start creating the tools that give them better information, now you're starting to provide added value. And that's what the Mortgage Coach AI tool does. One, it keeps a customer in your ecosystem. And second, it lets you be the one to deliver the value, something greater that they can get on their own. Because they're not going to do a full application and put all their data into an AI tool to get these answers. And so your answers are going to be better.
Ron,
I think it's a big picture.
I don't know if you remember or not, but it's happy hour. I'm not sure if I've seen you take one drink yet.
You're wrong. And by the way, I'm sure our friend Dave Savage will probably take a peek at this podcast. And Dave, if we haven't done that product right, or if you want to correct what we're saying, please expand. I'm sure you'll do this. We'll watch a replay, but please add to the conversation.
Yeah, Dave Savage, I'd love to hear how much does this change your product now with this AI evolution? Because, like I said, already a phenomenal tool. All the best loan officers are using it. But how much does this up the game, and how much more should someone use it now because of this interjection of AI?
Yeah,
But anyway,
and by the way, change the price. The price is the same for it. It's just more valuable. It's great.
yep, yep. All right, Ron. Here we're going to we're going to chat about. Let me go back to the overview, and it's not this one. I'm going to just keep sharing that one just for clicks. But
It
we're
seems
going to
like a
talk about managing and motivating millennials.
Yeah, so this was a report that came out last week, and it was the essence of the report was how to lead and manage millennials, and I think it's a HubSpot generated report, and it was maybe 16 pages if I remember, and I didn't really read the report because I'm interested about how to lead and manage millennials, although Lord knows I probably need that help, but instead there was a whole bunch of data about how what millennials mindset is and how they came to be who they are and what motivates them and how they make decisions that I thought were really, really, informative, that were really helpful. And this report is a little bit big, so we can't just post it everywhere. If you want a copy of the report, I'm happy to share a Google Drive link to it so that you can have it. Or you can just go to HubSpot and register and get it yourself. But the first point is just look at what's happened in a millennial's short life. They use Apple computers in kindergarten, and they were in AOL chat rooms as teens. They were part of the Facebook revolution in college. And before they were even got their first job, they were on iPhones. And if you're old, all that stuff happened to me in my 40s. So it just tells you what an interesting blast off they've had, in their generation. And that leads us to the second thing, which I thought was the most interesting thing. I've seen it before. And that is the millennials are really called the crisis generation. And Dave, I'm sure you're going to pull up the next slide. And here's the thing about what millennials face. When they're young, they had the .com bubble burst. And if you guys remember, for those that were adults then, the stock market dropped 65%. I don't mean overnight. I mean for like a year and a half. I mean, really depressed. And then they went to, corporations are evil with Enron and WorldCom and Tyco, Delphia, HealthSouth, all giant scandals from the largest companies in the world. And then from there, they went to the Great Recession, where something like a quarter of them saw their parents lose their home. And that just completely scarred them. And then, of course, we get to the bank failures and bailouts, and then the COVID outbreak. So they haven't had massive wars. There have been wars in this time, but they've had all sorts of financial scarring, is what it's called. And from that financial scoring, it's really been formative to them. And they're fearful to make decisions. They're fearful to buy a house. They're fearful when they buy stocks. They're fearful of making big purchases. They're fearful about finances. And so they're somewhat paralyzed. But if you're serving millennials, you have to understand about this scar tissue and figure out how to serve them. And one thing about millennials are really complicated, and they want an extremely, extremely dynamic digital experience. Let's say you're a lender, they're not comparing my product to Zillow. They're not comparing my product to whoever's the best technology. They're comparing my product to Amazon, to Domino's, where they follow their pizza every block on when it's to get there. They do it, by Uber, right, where they follow the car getting to pick them up. Like that, they go, how come you can't do that with my mortgage? How come I can't swipe left and get a mortgage, right? And they really demand this really elegant, dynamic digital experience. But at the same time, they want a hug. That humanness, a hug, somebody to help educate them, give them confidence, tell them it's going to be okay. And so at the same time, they want a really human touch. And what's so crazy, they want this great digital experience. They want to be handheld and hugged, and they want a really low price, which makes them a really difficult generation to serve. But from that, in this article, they come up with, the highest currency with millennials is trust. And if you don't have trust, you cannot serve a millennial. And so that's the thing you have to foster first. And then the study ended with this slide, and it really dovetails with other data we have, and that is there's this misconception that millennials are lazy. That they lay on the couch. What is it called when you lay on the couch for like 2 days? They have a name for it. I forget what it is.
I don't think it's Netflix and chill, but
No, no, no,
that's
no. It's
something
called
else.
like it's like decaying. Like there's a name. They have some name for just. McKenna would know. She can tell you in your earpiece. But I forget what it's called. But anyway,
Rotting?
so what's it
Rotting?
called?
I don't know.
Rotting.
Rotting?
Yeah, it's called rotting. Yeah,
Hey, there you go.
what do you? I'm a rot. I'm gonna stay in my pajamas and stay in bed 2 days. But you know what the thing is? The truth is, they're really hardworking. They are something like 50% more likely to have a side hustle or some sort of gig, second job. They're working 2 jobs or working hard, sometimes more than 2 jobs. They work a full-time job a day, and then they're doing Grubhub or Uber or doing some gig economy type of thing. So they have a really, really big work ethic. The thing is, they're burned out a little bit because they don't know what it means. Like they don't know what they're working for. They don't know what to do with their money. They don't know what their future is. They don't know what older age looks like. They really don't know, and they're more demanding, which is really interesting. But Dave, you and I talked a couple of weeks ago that millennials are the highest earning generation in history. They're earning 50% more in inflation adjusted dollar than their parents' generation. So they're really generating a whole bunch of income, and thankfully their income is growing faster than inflation. There's still affordability issues at homes, but it's really looking positive. But they're working super hard to do it, and they don't know what to do with their money, and they're just scared and paralyzed a little bit, and they need a lot of help, moving forward. So thoughts?
I've had a good amount of people report to me throughout the various companies that I've been at, and I would say probably most of them would fall into the category of millennials. What's the age of a millennial right now? Max age is 44.
Something like that. I don't remember.
In the I think it's in the is it in the 20s? Doesn't matter, but
It's like,
I would say
yeah,
most of
like
the
25 to
people,
40 or something.
yeah, in my 15 years, I think in my 15 years in corporate America, uh, running marketing teams, I would say most of the people that have worked with me on my teams and so on have been millennials. And yeah, I think it's 100% true. Their motivation is different than what mine or your older generations are. I'm not too far from millennial. I think I'm one of my Gen X by made it by like 3 years or so, 4 years. But yeah, there's definitely a difference, and their motivations are different. And there's been plenty of studies done around millennials and Gen Z, and them needing more purpose in their work and so on. So, but yeah, the tough time and tough financial times that we've seen in these big milestone years with the Great Recession and so on is, I think that impacts people in a real way. So yeah.
Yeah. Dave, did you say, to quote you, my and your older generations? Is that what you said?
What?
Quick,
So
I'm, by the way, Mr. Whippersnap, I am Gen X.
Are you really?
I'm the very first year.
All right. So I can't say okay, boomer, to you.
Yeah, you're the tail end of the Gen X. I'm the front end of it.
Okay.
No generation here.
Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. We are the same generation. That is
Yeah.
funny. I've
I
got
don't know how that
producer
happened.
McKenna laughing at me.
Oh, there you go. She's
You
the
ready?
millennial.
You ready for the last topic before we get to Ron's rant?
Yeah, I'm definitely ready for the last topic. And hang on here because we're going to use a little bit of data, but we're going to get to a point. And the title of this topic is housing market nobility, and it comes from a newsletter from Ben Carlson. And his newsletter is A Wealth of Common Sense. I strongly recommend subscribing to his newsletter. It's free. He's with, I think, Reinhold's Investment, and he is a great financial planner, advisor. But his does this free newsletter, which is phenomenal. And he also does a podcast. But and I would say about half of his content applies to mortgage and real estate in some way. A lot of it goes to finance. Occasionally, he does investment stuff, which we may tune out of because we don't really care about how to balance your portfolio. But in this one, where he talks about the housing market nobility, and you can get to the next slide. And here's how he started this conversation out. Is he said, housing is probably one of the great equalizers, or it's been democratized in that the wealth is pretty evenly spread throughout generations, or throughout income tranches. So the top 1% of wealthy people only own 13% of the real estate, and then the top 10% own 30%, and the top 50% own 45%. And if you compare that to actually stocks and bonds, the top 1% of wealthy people own 50% of stocks. So stocks is not egalitarian. It's really for the rich. The rich mostly own stocks and bonds, where almost anyone can own stock or own real estate. And so that's what makes it a really good investment. And then he starts to talk about, when he talks about housing market nobility, that now what's happened, it used to be access to everybody, but due to the distortions that happened through the pandemic, housing now has a nobility. If you were able to buy a house before or during the pandemic, you now have housing nobility. And this is what this means. Most of the people that owned a house during the pandemic either bought the house or refinanced the house, got an interest rate somewhere around 3%. A matter of fact, at one point, 75% of homeowners had a 3% or less interest rate, which is really crazy. And at the same time, they bought their house at a fairly low price. And during the pandemic, nationally, prices increased by 50%. And so if you had a house that with a 3% mortgage, my neighbor, by the way, has 1.95%. I don't know how. I'm a lender. I don't have that. But nevertheless, he has 1.95%. But if you had an interest rate of 3%, and then you saw your home appreciate by 50%, you hit the lottery. Like, you have ultra low payment and you just got a 50%, bump in your wealth. That's great. But those ingredients now have made it unaffordable for young people to buy a home, and but there's all sorts of other distortions that happen in the market, but that's created a problem, and that's created this housing nobility, where if you were in the sweet spot, you're now rich and you have a really low cost of housing, and that it's caused a giant distortion in the market. And that this curve about who owns real estate or who owns wealth in America is going to change, where real estate is no longer going to be egalitarian or open to everybody. It's now going to contort towards the same kind of curve that stocks and bonds have as it relates to wealth creation. So really interesting, but I strongly recommend subscribe to Ben Carlson's stuff. It is so good, and it's easy to read, and he always has good charts and graphs, and he's kind of funny, and it does a lot of also like personal interests, like why should you be scared, or why am I scared, or whatnot. This is just some of the charts from his things. It talks about how first-time home buyers have hit an all-time low. This speaks to the affordability challenge. It also talks about the median age of home buyers, whether it's first-time home buyers or repeat buyers, super high. Now, another time, Dave, maybe next week, let's talk about why the median age of home buyers is increasing, because I've heard a whole lot of people speculate on it, and I simply don't think they're spot on accurate. And I'd love to talk about that another time.
Do you know what the median age of home buyers was during the year and a half or so period where the rates were down in the 2 to 3% range?
Yeah, well, you can kind of just extrapolate that from the chart you have right there. You back it up about 5 years, and it looks like it was. By the way, it was like 31 or 32. That's what it was. And for repeat buyers, it was somewhere, in the 51, 52 range. So it's gone up considerably. But I would argue that that's not so much affordability, because I think there's solutions to affordability issues if somebody's really passionate about home ownership. It might just be that housing formation is being delayed for a whole bunch of reasons. People are getting married later, they're having kids late. All the life events that usually trigger home ownership are happening later in life. And some of those reasons why those things are happening later in life is because people's life expectancy is elongating, so you're not as rushed. If you thought you were only going to live to 60, you weren't going to wait to have kids until you're 40. You're going to have them at 20. But now if you think you're going to live into your 90s, you're not so rushed to have a kid in your 20s, because you have life to live before and after. And so the whole longevity curve is changing, and changing the household formation, equation. And some of it isn't all bad news.
Yeah. Should I remind people? Should I remind people about our free T-shirt promo?
Sure. Heck yeah.
We had a segment earlier. If you're just joining us, and I'm gonna go back to the same one. We had a segment earlier. What we started off with was the
Dave, you just can't show this often enough. I don't know what's happened. It's like the 30th time it's come up.
yeah.
That's
We
great.
had a segment earlier where we were talking about the controversies that have happened over the last 3-4 weeks or so, and most recently with American Eagle. And I want to hear your take on American Eagle's slant on their new ad campaign. So comment for us, and we'll send the most intriguing, or maybe the top 3 most intriguing comments, questions, or takes on what they think about it.
Hey, Dave, can I go randomly, just tangentially to a topic?
Sure. You've got one more,
Real,
remember, Ron's rant.
I know. But regarding happy hour, I'm as always, I'm drinking beer out of a Miami Marlins authentic beer cup, which I got at the Lone Depot Stadium in Miami. Which one of the topics this week happened is that I don't know if you saw this. TJ Watt, no, JJ Watt accomplished the 999 challenge. I think it was in Chicago. And the 999 challenge is drink 9 beers, 9 stadium beers, eat 9 hot dogs in 9 innings. And I think he did it in like 5 innings. He had 3 hot dogs and 3 beers in the first inning. He had 2 hot dogs and 2 beers in the second inning. And then I think he did, only 1 in the third inning, took a break, and then he did the rest in like the 4th and 5th inning. But is the greatest feat drinking 9 beers, or is the greatest feat eating 9 hot dogs, or is the greatest feat paying for it? Which do you think is the greatest human feat?
That is what was in my mind. How much did that cost? Average cost. Let me grab my calculator. What's the average cost of a beer at a major league sporting event?
This beer at Lone Depot Park as a draft cost $18.
I was gonna say 15. So
and JJ's is about the same price. And by the way, nobody shows up to the Lone Depot Park. It's pretty empty. $18. And a hot dog at Lone Depot Park, which is a very expensive park, which I don't understand, is probably around $10. So let's just say it's $25 a round without tips.
Okay, so I think, but you've also got, when you buy a beer at a professional sports event, it's usually not just a can size 12 ounces. It's usually 16 or 22 or whatever.
Yeah.
So you say 9 beers, but it was probably more realistically 14, 13 beers or whatever. So I would say the beer thing is the biggest feat. However, seeing seeing any person walking straight after that many would be the beer would be the best, pending how they react after the game is over.
Dave, I thought we've hung out enough. I don't think you'd think that was such a feat, given that we've hung out.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, 9 hot dogs and 9 beers and 5 innings. And I mean, he's a big boy. And when he played football, apparently he'd have 2 breakfasts, 1 lunch, and 2 dinners. I mean, because the guy's a big dude. He's lean too, but he had no problem.
Who was
Matter
this
of fact,
again?
he went from the JJ Watt. He went from the game to a dinner. I probably would have gone to the game to a porta potty, but
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here's where we're going next. Tee this up, Ron.
Yeah, so we label this section Ron's rant, and I'm really eager to rant about something else, but we kind of tamed it down to talk about it. And the topic's really boring, but it's super important for everybody. And the topic is quantifying the impact of debt to long-term rates. And my rant part of this, before I actually get to useful data, is one, I'm super passionate about home ownership. I think it is the path to wealth. I think, though, that sometimes loan officers and real estate agents, we get either seduced or corrupted to giving bad advice. We get lazy and we take a shortcut, or we just use the latest slogan and we do a disservice. And as we start to give bad advice or advice that doesn't really pan out to be true, we're really undermining trust as well as, people's perception of our industry. And oftentimes, I know a lot of us, we have a kind of thought of, the value of real estate agents, and we're probably opinionated about it. And we probably have a thought about the value of loan officers, and we're probably opinionated in a positive way. But I would argue that over time, we've constantly stubbed our toe by giving bad advice. Example of that would be, trying to convince somebody that they can't afford a house to use 100% financing, on a stated income, stated asset loan, on a neg am first and a, HELOC second. That's pretty aggressive advice. Probably doesn't fit most clients. Yet some loan officers sold it to everyone because they could get up to 5 points on that. Like, that was just misserved advice. I would argue, and I'm not going to go into it here, but I'd love to because it's one of my favorite topics, the idiocy of date the rate, marry the house. I've written about it repeatedly. I spoke about it from stage, on podcasts, why I absolutely didn't believe that and thought it was malpractice, and loan officers should stop saying it. And in some places, I was really ridiculed for my stance. But to be able to date the rate and marry the house, you need to have 4 things happen. 1, the borrower's income has to sustain at the same level. 2, interest rates need to fall. And 3, home prices need to be stable or improving. The 4th thing is the qualifying criteria has to remain the same. Well, 3 of those things did not happen, right? Interest rates haven't fallen, home prices haven't appreciated, and loan guidelines haven't weakened. They've gotten tighter, right? And yet we promised this date the rate, marry the house. And 2 years later, people can't afford their house and they don't know what to do. And then we made it worse by saying, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you, and builders were key on this, we're going to give you a temporary buy down of 1 year and 2 years because we guarantee you rates are going to drop, and you're going to be able to get a much lower rate and afford this house. So 2 years later, especially people that bought new homes are now having to sell their home at losses because they cannot afford the monthly payment. And so if you're the loan officer that was selling date the rate, marry the house, what happens now? Do you think those clients trust you? Like you probably didn't give the best advice. And did you give it because it was just a slogan you heard and it fit your agenda? Did you not know better? Was it just malpractice? And I say this, I know I'm offending most of the people listening, so I apologize. But what I'm really trying to do is get your attention to give better advice, like think it through, right? And so even today, we hear, oh, rates are going to come down. Rates are going to come down. Really? Well, we've been saying that for 3 years. Has that happened? No, it's just made us look like jackals for giving bad advice. And so then our default is to scream and yell at the president or scream and yell at, the Fed. It's the Fed's fault. They should. I mean, Barry Beeb's the best, but what does he like to do? Just tell you how bad the Fed is. It's his forecasts aren't wrong. It's the evil, corrupt Fed that is killing his forecast. So they just said what's right, it'd be right. I don't subscribe to that. I'm not so certain rates are coming down. Historically, 30-year fixed interest rates have been 7.5% to 8% historically. There's been a couple of distortions in the market, especially during the pandemic, where they dropped. I'm not planning that we're going to get back to that distorted level. I wouldn't plan that at all. And I think if you look at analysts and economists outside of the echo chamber of mortgage and real estate, that those analysts, those economists are saying there's upward pressure on rates, not downward pressure. Like almost all evidence is upward pressure on rates. Yet we still have the majority of our brethren here in mortgage saying rates are going to go down, rates are going to go down. Don't worry, rates are going to go down. I know it. I'm sure of it. I'm not so sure. And so I wasn't supposed to include that in my rant. I just couldn't help myself, David. Sorry. So that gets us actually back to the planned programming. Thank you for that small rant.
I was about to say that was quite the rant. Yeah, we're gonna have section graphics, and you just convinced me that Ron's rant is the right name for this one.
I got it in me, David. I don't know.
No,
I got it in me.
I hear you on the date the rate, marry the house. But I think every loan officer that I know posted that on social media.
Yeah, and that's why you're not trusted. Like it's okay to be different. It would have been, you could have said, hey, look, analysts, economists everybody thinks rates are going to improve and that you're going to be able to refinance. But to be clear, here's what has to happen. You have to maintain the same level of income. Home prices have to stay flat or appreciate. Loan guidelines have to stay the same, and interest rates have to improve. If those 4 things happen, and you can even say, I believe they're going to. If those four things happen, we're going to be able to refinance you into a better position. Because the great thing is, while your home price stays fixed, we can always refinance you at any time. Like if you said it that way, that's super responsible, right? You've educated the client, you told them about the risk, you had an opinion, which I think is super important, and you've given them advice. And you told them how you base the advice. And if the market doesn't behave the way you want, you've done a good job. But I don't know how many loan officers did. If these four things happen, then you get to date the rate. If one doesn't happen, well, you know what? You're either going to have to stay in the marriage or get divorced, and sell your house. I don't think we spoke that way. And so that's what I think is part of zero responsible. Not that what we said didn't come true, is that we didn't give reasonable advice and we didn't risk manage.
What is the average rate over the last, let's say 50 years, maybe 75 year? What's the average rate?
Historic rates are 7.5% to 8% historic. Last 50,
define
50 years,
historic.
it's slanted more towards 7%.
Okay.
But that's historically correct. It's just what it is. And we're back to what's normal right now. And David, that's a good segue to actually the topic we had, teed up for this. And here's the thing, and this is, as you think about rates, try to get to a wider audience. This chart we're showing you is from Torsten Slok, Dr. Torsten Slok, and he writes he writes his article is what is the name of his article? Is the Daily Spark. He's the lead economist for Apollo Management. He is widely quoted. He has been the most correct economist on interest rates, GDP, for the last 5 years. Simply the most accurate economist. I can guarantee you, by the way, he's been saying the absolute opposite thing you've been hearing from, say the economists from NAR or some of the analysts that sell you subscriptions and tell you what you want to know. By the way, I don't say Mike Frantantoni from the MBA. He's a pretty good forecaster too. I trust him. The MBA thinks rates are going to stay flat the rest of the year for the most part. But here's what Torsten Slok said. He goes, in this particular thing, and I would follow Torsten, his free newsletter, and I would say once again about 3 times a week, it's spot on to interest rates, GDP, housing. It's great. If you wanted to be a well-informed loan officer, read his newsletter. So here's what he did on his newsletter a couple of days ago. He said, look, what's the impact on long-term interest rates? Well, on every 1% increase in U.S. government debt. So here's what this means. Let's say U.S. government debt's now somewhere around 105% to GDP, right? He says for every percent it goes up to GDP, it's going to put upward pressure on interest rates, long-term interest rates, by 3 basis points. So that's what, so in this the chart that Dave just showed you, he goes, these are the 5 leading studies on the impact of U.S. debt on long-term interest rates. And as you can see, they range anywhere from 2 to 5 basis points, or 2 to 4 basis points. And he thinks he actually said 2.7 specifically, and he gives his math, but it's roughly around 3%. Well, that's great. You know what? It's expected that U.S. debt to GDP, and I mean government debt to GDP, is going to increase by 20% in the next 10 years. That means that there's 60 basis points of upward pressure built into long-term interest rates, period. Regardless of inflation, regardless of what the Fed does, regardless of how the economy performs, the simple nature of debt is putting a ton of upward pressure on interest rates. And so if you're a loan officer, you want to know that. Now, is that going to happen? Who knows? Because if we have a recession, there's all sorts of things that can happen. A recession, some sort of, world crisis, that's a flight to safety, that, the stock market crash, flight to bonds, all sorts of things that can happen that can drive rates lower. So I wouldn't say absolutely this is going to happen, but I want to be ignorant of that pressure. I want to know both sides of the coin. What's pushing them up? What's pushing them down, what's likely to happen, and then trying to curtail my advice to all these data points. I think this is a super important data point. And with that, Dave, let's go to the last slide, and then we can get your comments on this. This is really, really important. It's a great visual and super important to understand. The blue line represents the Fed funds rate, or the overnight cost of funds. The red line is 30-year fixed interest rates. You can tell they typically travel together. Although in the fourth quarter of last year, the Fed cut the overnight cost of funds by 100 basis points, at which at the same time, 30-year fixed interest rates went up 100 basis points. And this is so important to understand. The Fed does not establish or control the long arm of the curve. That means anything 10-year treasuries or older leading up to 30-year fixed interest rates, the Fed has virtually no control. Now, by the way, the Treasury, they do have some control over what they buy, right? You can get into quantitative easing where they start to buy the long end of the curve. Right now, what's happening is they're buying the short end of the curve, which is what's causing the wider spread in the long end of the curve. And I would love to do a rant on people's misperception on the spread between 10-year Treasury and 30-year fixed rates someday. But here's the key. So we may be rooting, and the president may browbeat, or it might even be the right thing, Chairman Powell and the Fed, to cut interest rates. Maybe there's a quarter cut in September, maybe a quarter cut in December. That doesn't mean that our 30-year fixed interest rates are going to improve. It doesn't mean it at all. And in fact, it can actually trigger the exact opposite. Because if bond buyers think that the Treasury is corrupted, right, or that they're not focused on what's important, controlling inflation, right, they're less likely to want to buy, and they're asking for a premium in order to buy. And at the same time, we're adding $1.6 trillion in U.S. Treasuries and bonds and T-bills into the market to fund the government's debt. So we're going to have massive supply, which, by the way, there's still a lot of appetite for, massive supply. And we also have reissues, meaning we have some treasuries and T-bills maturing that we have to sell again into the market at a higher interest rate, by the way. So we have tons of supply coming, and we need to have a ton of demand, and that demand weakens if they don't have faith in how the Fed is managing the money supply and the interest rate. And so it's very likely if the Fed goes too fast to cut interest rates or goes against the market wishes, we can see the long end of the curve increase. So we have to pay attention to that, right? We can't go, oh gosh, it looks like the Fed's going to cut interest rates a quarter point in September. That should help mortgage rates come down. Nope, I'm not so certain of that. And so the only thing I'm really trying to encourage everybody is be well informed. We no longer can be loan jockeys. We're not just people that take applications. Machine can do that. We say that, look, we can charge more than a call center. We can charge more than a servicer because our advice matters. Well, then we have to get damn good at advice, right? We have to get really good at advisory tools like Mortgage Coach. We have to be better educated than listening to the economist at, National Association of Realtors. I keep trying not to call them out. The most wrong person on planet Earth. We have to start following people that aren't in our echo chambers or a little bit better educated so that when we give advice, people trust it. We can have an opinion and we can be wrong about our opinion. I'm very opinionated. I'm wrong frequently. But one thing, when I'm wrong, I try to portray both sides. Like, here's what I know. Here's why I think this is important. And here's where I think it's going to go. But who knows? And we take that stance. I think that's much better than just what sometimes seems like self-serving advice. Anyway, that was quite the rant, David.
Yeah, here's my take on it. The blue line is American Eagle Outfitters. The red line is Astronomer. Brand engagement. So that's what I see when I see that line. I'm not going to add to Ron's rant.
I would go red.
I'll just make myself sound stupid.
I go the other way. Red American Eagle, blue. The American Eagle stocks going up. But this was the Astronomer. Yeah, I'm sorry about that rant. But I'm just so passionate about homeownership. We have to be great advisors, right? And we want to preserve what we get paid. We got to give great advice. We cannot give crappy advice. And so we just need to be a little better educated and a little better scripted. I'm
gonna hold you accountable, Ron, to make sure that Ron's rant, the segment Ron's rant, is inspiring and as heated and as charged as that one was. So every week I want to see Ron's rant be just like that one.
Next week we'll tackle $18 beers at baseball stadiums
with hot dogs.
Yeah.
Man, that was great. I'm not sure if we got any comments on the jeans versus jeans thing, but that was a fun hour. We're at 59 minutes right now. So I think with that, I think we'll see you next week. Visit us on all of our socials, on YouTube, on Facebook, Little Nessie. You can follow Ron and I personally if you want, but every week we're going to keep coming at you with interesting, or at least with what Ron and I feel are interesting topics. So most of them are going to be related to either marketing or mortgage and housing. And quite often, a lot of them will be AI centric. But we're just going to keep coming at you. And hey, Ron said it last week, but let us know if you enjoyed it. Let us know what else you think you would like to hear from us. We're just getting started in this little Nessie podcast, live streaming from social media. So, Ron, good to go.
Good to go. Appreciate it, everybody. Have a
Take
great
care.
week out there.
See
End of
ya.
July, last day of July. Who knew?
Ooh, later.
See you guys.